I'm excited about this new item on our agenda. Again, we've been talking about doing this since last fall. So we've got this a regional focus theme. And again, we'll be doing this periodically at our upcoming board meetings. So go ahead and move on to slide 2, Dan. So again, the idea behind this is to make the work that we do in your jurisdictions more tangible. And Dan, you're in presentation mode. Can you share full screen? Yeah, great, thank you. So again, the idea is to make the work that we do out in your communities more tangible. So I know, again, as board members, you have a lot on your plates, and sitting in ORCAA board meeting for 2 hours a month perhaps makes it hard to connect for the work we do. And so the idea is to all get to know a little bit more about each other's jurisdictions and the air quality issues going on. And so again, roughly every other month or so, we'll focus on the air quality work that ORCAA is doing around in your counties or cities. And so again, when we were first talking about this last fall, Greg volunteered to go first. So we're kicking off with Jefferson County this month. And then, of course, as you can see on the screen, Jefferson County is one of ORCAA's 6 counties. And so with that, I think I'll hand it off to Greg just to tell us a little bit more about his county. And then from there, we'll move along.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. And they asked me to take all the, best of the ORCAA out, but you can go ahead and move to the next slide, Dan. And, it is a very divided county geographically, politically too. But we have most of our population in East Jefferson County with our one incorporated city of Port Townsend, and I think all of the ORCAA inspected sites over on East Jefferson County. We really struggle to provide services on the west end, and of course the middle is the whole Olympic National Park, as you can see. I think you might have more words on this slide too. Maybe you have to forward it. Oh, no, never mind. Okay. So as you can see, the blue part is Port Townsend, where Blue Heron is, that you've probably seen some of the air quality indicators from, and then we're building our first unincorporated urban growth area in Mid County right now, and then I represent the South County and West County as the District 3 County Commissioner. And it's about 33,000 people, so a little smaller than Queen Anne and twice the size of New Hampshire. So it's a really separated area, and it's growing, pretty slowly. We're like 2% per year is kind of the rate of growth, and we do expect some new growth with the new sewer. And we have, people usually ask about ORCAA and the Port Townsend Paper Company that is not regulated by ORCAA because they do the craft process, which I don't know. Lauren explained to me, and I forgot already when we were out there, but the sulfur dioxides or something that they use in the craft paper process is regulated by the Department of Ecology. So. Sorry, was Mike, were you going to tell me what it really was?
Well, you were very close. We don't regulate the Port Townsend paper. It's the only Title V, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but just to answer your question, the only Title V facility up there, and we don't have jurisdiction. And it's the process of making the pulp. They're using wood fibers that they're adding the sulfur to, that then breaks it down, and the pulp from the wood fibers creates the paper. Whereas other ones like McKinley and stuff, they're recycling paper to make the pulp. That's the distinguished part, is basically using chemical on wood to make the pulp. Then it's an industrial section. If it's recycling the cardboard and other paper to make paper, it would be under our jurisdiction. I don't know if that helps.
Yes, thanks for that. So they're our largest private employer, but and you can see that bit of the slide too, that the West County only has 229 deliverable addresses. A lot of them, use Aberdeen or Port Angeles as their city that they go to, and many areas in West County don't actually have a fire district. So if they always invest in sprinklers in West County. And then we went out and inspected. I think this is the appropriate time, but correct me, Jeff, if not, to look at one of our largest emitters at NAVMAG Indian Island, which is right by Marrowstone. If you can see that the Jefferson County kind of looks like a dragon. Port Townsend and Quimper Peninsula is the head, and you can see the front legs there. That's Marrowstone and Indian Island. The one on the left is Indian Island, where we went out to NAVMAG, which is where all the ships and vessels from Bangor refuel and unload. It's a lot of ordnance is stored out there. So it was great to be out there with Rob, who had a lot of experience from his military service, that he could kind of understand some of the codes on all the magazines, as well as the actual work that we were there doing. And Lauren could explain some of the large projects they're getting into as well. And it was great to have Mike there as well. So I really enjoyed kind of being part of the team as we were inspecting the emissions out there, which were largely emergency generators, the boilers that they had and boilers that they had, but mostly emergency generators for if the electricity goes out. But really fascinating to kind of be a fly on the wall as we went through, a pretty unique emitter that ORCAA regulates and inspects on a regular basis. So with that, I'm sure we'll come back and talk a little bit more about our tour, but I think we're going to pass it over to Adele to talk about some of the monitoring.
Yeah, so I just put together a brief history of ORCAA's monitoring activities in Jefferson County and what some of the implications are from the data that we've collected over the years. Next slide. So we started monitoring in 1970 at Port Townsend High School, and what we were measuring there was total suspended particulate, which is any particles that could stay in the air without falling down. But then in addition to that, we were also measuring particle fallout, which is not something we do anymore. And that is where they put out these giant collection plates and basically just measured how much stuff fell out of the air onto these plates. And so it was more of a nuisance rather than what you were breathing in the air, but what was falling out of the air onto your property or your things. 1973 to 1974, we were monitoring in two locations, Port Townsend Appliance and Port Townsend Fire Hall. And at Fire Hall, we were actually monitoring for sulfate as well as total suspended particulate. Did that for that 1 year, and then just moved to total suspended particulate in 1976 to 1987. Then we didn't do any monitoring in Port Townsend for quite some time. I guess apparently decided it wasn't necessary. And then in 1995, we did a study at Blue Heron Middle School. We had a nephelometer out there, and the ORCAA determined that it was in fact a good idea to monitor in Port Townsend. And so permanent monitors were put in December 2000, and we had both the nephelometer out there and a PM 2.5 reference monitor, and that's how we calibrate our nephelometer to give us actual good data on particulate. And PM 2.5 is particulate matter that is smaller than 2.5 micrometers, just for those of you who are new. And that's the diameter of the particles in the air. It's pretty small. And then we stopped using the FRM out there after we got our good correlation, and we moved to the nephelometer, which is still there. And we've been monitoring at Blue Heron Middle School with the nephelometer since then. So it says 2000 to 2024. But now in 2025, we are still monitoring there. I didn't update the slide when I made this happen. And then just one last thing that we did when a few years after I started here, 2016 to 2017, we did a year-long saturation study in Jefferson County, which I will move on to now. That's where we put out, Dan, next slide. That's where we put out 4 additional monitors. They're highlighted on the map there. We had the one at Blue Heron co-located, and then we also had a monitor at Jefferson Mental Health Services, East Jefferson Fire and Rescue, and then down in Chimacum. And the slide on the side is the percent of days that we measured at the different air quality levels at each site during that year. And you can see that it was pretty consistent among all the sites. There's a more extended report on this on ORCAA's website, but we found that the Blue Heron Middle School air monitor continues to be representative of at least this region of Jefferson County, which, as Greg mentioned, is a divided county. We don't have any data for West County. Next slide. And then finally, this is something you guys are familiar with, but here I have listed daily PM 2.5 data since 2000, so 25 years of data collected at Jefferson County. And what I just really want to point out on this slide, is that both summer and winter air quality have improved over the last 25 years. You will see that we start to pop up with some red and even a purple in 2018 and 2020, and those were 2 years that we had some really bad region-wide wildfire smoke events in the region, and so that will show up there. I also want to point out in the upper right-hand corner some oranges and reds too in the winter, and that was from likely from wood stoves during a very cold, stagnant period, which we used to see a lot of in the winter. Not so much in Port Townsend because of its location; it tends to get more wind than other sites, but that particular year was pretty bad. And I am going to pass this over to Mike, I think, or Dan. I'm going to pass this over to Dan, and he's going to talk more about our concern with wood stoves and outdoor burning. And
yeah, so smoke is the issue. As I'll leave this slide up for a minute. Those red blocks in the middle of Odell's slide here, that's wildfire smoke. That's something we're dealing with more since 2018 than we ever saw before, or in the 21 years I've been here at least. So wildfire smoke is a concern. And let's see, I'm not getting a slide forward. There we go. Wildfire smoke is a concern in the summer months. It's something, it doesn't occur every year, but it's something we are always working on. I will note I've worked closely with the Jefferson County health folks. Lara up there has been great help. We've made multiple presentations to the county public outreach, doing wildfire smoke education and instructing people how to deal with it. But then in the winter months, we also have issues of concern with outdoor burning and with indoor burning, wood stove use. And I actually run our wood stove replacement and recycling program. We have a grant from the state. I've been managing that since I believe 2012. And before that, we had a couple of years where Mike's team, the compliance officers, inspectors, were managing that. But essentially, we get money from a state grant called the Wood Smoke Reduction Grant, looking at ways to reduce the impacts of wood smoke on our communities. That grant lets us provide financial incentives to take old, uncertified, dirty burning wood stoves out of circulation and either replace them with cleaner home heating devices or just put them into metal scrap and recycle them completely. Traditionally, the state grant was restricted to densely populated areas that had high risk of violating federal standards, going over 20 parts per, or going over a certain standard for federal pollution. We got the state to agree to expand our coverage and let us offer the Recycle Award to all 6 of our counties about 4 years ago. And in this last biennium, we've been able to offer the replacement program, which gives a higher level of financial incentive for people that want to change from wood to ductless heat pumps, for instance. We've been able to expand that out of Thurston County into all of Mason County, and then eastern Clallam County and eastern Jefferson County. So covering all of those, more densely populated areas. We have actually had really good response. The numbers aren't huge, but since we've been able to offer it in Jefferson County, I've done 25 wood stove replacements up there, or removals at least. Some of them were recycling. Some of them were full replacements. We've had great participation from a couple HVAC companies in town, Frederickson Electric, I think, and All Weather Heating. So really good participation. We're seeing that grow year after year. So anticipating offering that again in the coming year, depending on what we get out of the state legislature in terms of the grant. But that's the big side of the wood stove. So we are seeing good participation. We're not looking to ban wood stoves or anything like that, but we're trying to get those older, dirtier burning wood stoves out of circulation and give people options for cleaner devices.
Can I pipe in here for a moment, Dan, just to say that I've been pushing for this since it was, offered only in the urban areas initially. And, I think if you did a ratio to population, Jefferson County would be right up there, because we love a coupon. I didn't mention in the demographics, but we're also the oldest county in the state and the second oldest county in the entire country, I believe. Yeah, keep them coming, and we'll keep using those coupons to get rid of the dirty wood stoves.
Yeah, and I think the state census numbers I've looked at for actually Port Townsend, Port Angeles, and Sequim, they're all in the 30% of range of households with wood burning devices in them. So 1 in 3 basically has a wood stove or a wood heater in their home. So it's a issue we do want to help address. And Mike, you want to take on outdoor burning?
Sure, one quick thing on the wood stove is that, we get very few complaints of wood stove, smoke up there, which must be Dan's, program must be working because, yeah, of all the counties, there are very, very few wood stove complaints up in that area. There's just a couple spots, so keep the program going and, hopefully we'll get those complaints down even more. Switching to outdoor burning, Jefferson County's fire districts are kind of unique. They partnered, most of them have partnered with ORCAA to issue their own land clearing burn permits. Or generally, ORCAA will issue land clearing burn permits to most of our area. But Jefferson County, the fire districts have an ability to enter an agreement with us that they will issue their own permits, collect the money from that. And then in turn, they'll help us with response, complaints and stuff. And they do a really good job of that. We get good work with the different fire districts up there. We also get help from the Environmental Health Department in Peking. She does great. She used to work for us, and she knows the burning rules, asbestos rules, and so it's a great resource. And I want to shout out to her and also the fire districts that are real good about calling us and saying, hey, we're supposed to handle this complaint, but we're running into some issues and, can ORCAA help? And so we work close together with them and it works good. There's a few that don't require, that do not have an agreement with us. And I believe that's Brennan and Discovery Bay. Those 2 areas we do issue permits. So we do issue a few up there, but most of it's done by the county. Okay.
I'm gonna interrupt. I have to check out. Thank you all for allowing me to join in. So have a great day.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, so as you can see there, most of them issue the land clearing. They help us with complaint investigations. They're very good. So let's go on to the next slide. Asbestos and demo programs. As you guys are aware, will become aware if you're new to that word, ORCAA requires asbestos and demolition permits for anything being demolished or renovated. And so we operate that program up there. We really rely a lot on the building departments in the area to help facilitate the education, because a lot of people will go into their city or county building departments and say, I'm gonna tear this down and build a new house, or I'm gonna remodel. And if they don't tell the people, hey, you need to get asbestos survey, you need to talk to ORCAA, we would lose a lot of that. And then people could be tearing apart a lot of asbestos and not handling it appropriately, and the contamination that comes with it. Again, shout out to the county environmental health department. They and building department there. They do a great job in requiring people to get the ORCAA permit. They've even got it, I believe, on their permit that says talk to ORCAA. That works really well. We do quite a few. It seems like in the Port Townsend area, of course, that's where the more dense population and housing is. But we run that program up there and it's done by the inspectors. They will review the asbestos and demo, make sure there's either no asbestos before it gets demolished or renovated, or if there is, there's some standards that have to be followed. The picture you're looking at actually is from a different county. That was one that they were doing all that without any permits and ended up having a bunch of asbestos in there. And I won't name the county, but that's what we want to avoid, because they just distributed asbestos all over the place right there when they dug into that one. So again, that's actually takes a lot of time from the inspectors, but we are up there, and if you have questions of asbestos or your staff does, we're happy to talk to them some more.
And Mike, I'll note your notes here say you had 30 asbestos notifications and 40 demo notifications per year out of Jefferson County.
Thank you. I guess I could have looked at that. Yeah. So there's probably more renovations going on that we're not hearing about, and that's where, again, we rely on the counties and the cities, building departments to help out. Actually, Forks has been very cooperative with us, little town over there. They will send people our way when they do some renovations. But that number, through education should be going up, because I'm sure there's more than what we know about out there, 30 in the whole county. I think that's why I put those numbers down. It's like a little lower than I thought when I looked at them, because I thought they were more up there, but that's what we're looking at. Go ahead and jump to the next one, please. Working with businesses. This is more down the engineering section. Of course, compliance is made up of inspectors and engineering as for a year now. The engineers work with the businesses. There's 48 registered sources. The engineers and or inspectors will go up and inspect those, most of them on yearly. Sometimes they're 2 years, depending on how large of an emitter it is. As it says there, no AOP sources, that would be that Port Townsend paper if we had jurisdiction with them. That's why the asterisks on here. But we do not, as we mentioned, that's through the industrial section. So, and then we do 44 inspections per year. You see 48 regular. So that pretty much tells us that we hit the 44 of those are yearly inspections, and there's probably 4 that are small enough that we hit them every 2 years, or well behaved enough that we don't need to go every year. The emission inventory, it's something that the engineers do, and that's a whole nother, there's some point we can give the emission inventory 101 to the board. A lot goes into a lot more, but basically, every year the Title V majors, synthetic miners, and some of the smaller ones, we track their emissions and we send it off to ecology and EPA. Well, from the Jefferson County area, we collect emission inventory from 4 of the largest sources there. And I hope you don't ask me which ones. I don't have that off the top of my head. I should have brought that. So yeah, 4 from there. That again, that's all work done by the engineers. The inspectors will help with the inspections, but everything else is pretty much an engineering function. Next slide, please. Now here we are with our esteemed board member, Greg. I think he's kind of on the left side in the middle of 2 people. This is our inspection of the Naval Magazine Indian Island. As Greg said, it was a very interesting thing. We were inspecting the boilers, the backup diesel generators, doing an opacity reading when they fire up the generators. And then, of course, all around you, there were, bunkers of maybe perhaps ammunition and stuff. So kind of interesting. They had a lot of security there. Lauren, our engineer, is in the forefront, and then Rob is taking down some numbers. That's something that we do a lot of boilers and backup generators. What you're looking at here are the boilers. So it's a good picture to show kind of what we do in a lot of sources. There's a whole bunch of sources where we have boilers, and we're checking basically the firing rates and the hours operating and the maintenance records. Make sure they keep them tuned so they create less emissions. Did I miss anything on the notes, Dan?
I just wanted to interject one thing. The emissions inventory that we submit to EPA goes into a huge repository of all of the emissions, and it's really important to climate and air quality researchers. It goes into all the models that try to predict what the air quality is gonna be, long-term, short-term. So it's really, having gone from a research position years ago, using that data to coming here and seeing how it's actually done and the quality that goes into that is kind of cool. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys, that it is important and it does get used.
Yes, it's a lot of data. I mean, we have some close to 700 sources, and of course, we don't do emissions inventory on all of them. I can't tell you exactly how many. I want to guess.
Some of it's parameter. So,
Well, yeah, and you know, but all the big facilities, like I said, majors, synthetic miners, and then the next level of emitters, we will collect all that data and then send it off. And so it's it does go, yeah, into a large database, and it also is there for the public to look at. And occasionally we'll have people call us and ask about the air quality, and we refer them to that. Amongst other things, because that'll give them an indicator of what the emissions that are coming out in the area they're looking at.
Yeah, I think it's been
Like,
about 3 years since we've had a presentation on emissions inventory, but it's probably about time to cycle that back through.
Can I
Go
throw a
ahead.
couple observations in real quick before we go on to questions? You know, as I said, it was great. And one of the things that I didn't really expect, but that was very clear, was that it's there's a lot of relationship building that goes on in these inspections too. You know, Rob talked a lot about, you know, how often you exercise this emergency boiler and go through it. And it's kind of, that was sort of an unexpected aspect, is just, it's, the inspections assist in preventative and regular maintenance for the organization. That was pretty clear. Another thing is it was fun to look at opacity of the particular the stacks and everything. I just want to remind Mike that he promised that the next opacity training coming up year, he's going to offer to board members if we can make it down there. Because yeah, it's a fun, very tangible thing to do, because it's a pretty, I don't know. This one was pretty clear. So there was not a lot of opacity, but I think it'd be a fun thing for board members to participate in. And then finally, just again, thanks. It was great to see the relationships that we're building. And, you know, Bill, their environmental manager at NavMag Indian Island, has been there since '94. But, you know, we met with the new boiler guy and some of the regular maintenance folks that were going around, and all of these relationships were relationships that Rob had obviously nurtured over years, and that were real things. And that was a big part of it.
I want to jump on that a little bit, because yeah, I agree. I think the relationships is probably one of the biggest jobs for the inspectors, especially because they're out there. And whenever the source loses somebody, and we have to retrain, rebuild, or we lose somebody, retrain and rebuild, it really makes a difference, because you lose that relationship. That relationship makes them feel safe, that they can give us what, you know, the information straight, and that we'll deal with them straight. And, you know, even if it means a violation, as opposed to if you don't have that relationship, it makes it much more difficult to do our job. And so one of the key factors when we're hiring new people like Christian is people we think can work with people and build that relationship. And this one is unique because we have two people who used to be in the military, Rob and Aiden. And when they go out to those type of sources, it really helps. It gives it credibility just from the start, because it's a military place and they can start talking the military jargon. And you know, props to them for doing a good job and keeping the relationships going with all these 700 sources.
Great.
And thank Rob when you see him. You know, he has 2 Purple Hearts. I don't think I've ever met
Yes.
anyone before that has 2 Purple Hearts. That's either,
Whoa.
you know, really brave, or, you know,
Uh,
doesn't learn. Went right back in. I don't know.
well,
But it was a lot of fun. And
But if you talk to him, he would have still went back after the 2 of them, but I think
I
they
think he
decided,
would.
no, yeah.
And then the one other thing is just to say that the team is coming out too to make a presentation, which was kind of what I asked to add on to this presentation. So instead of coming to the Board of County Commissioners, they're coming out to our Board of Health later this month to make the same presentation and kind of keep the dialogue going both ways to make sure that our Board of Health, which includes the commissioners as well as city councilors and consumers of health, of course, also get the skinny on what ORCAA is doing for our community.